Take a moment and think about your morning. What is the first thing you do when you wake up? Do you check your phone? Stretch your body? Or maybe make a cup of coffee? For many people around the world, coffee is not just a drink. It is a daily friend, a warm start, and a little spark that wakes the mind. Every single day, people drink more than 2 billion cups of coffee. That means, at almost every moment, someone, somewhere, is holding a warm cup. Coffee gives us energy. But it also gives us time to think, to talk, and to dream. It connects people in small cafes, busy offices, and quiet homes. It has become the second most traded product in the world, after oil. Wars were fought over it. Empires grew rich from it. And revolutions were born beside it. But here is the strange part. The invention of coffee, the way we roast, grind, and brew it, was never planned. It was not discovered by a king or a scientist. It began with a group of dancing goats and a curious man in the highlands of Ethiopia. Yes, goats. And that accident would change human history forever. So today, let's go back in time. Let's discover how one small red berry became the world's favorite drink. This is not just a story about coffee. It is a story about curiosity, mistakes, and the magic of human discovery. So, sit back, relax, and maybe take a sip from your own cup. This is the accidental majesty of coffee. Before coffee came into the world, life was very different. People worked with the sun and rested with the moon. There was no quick way to stay awake, no easy way to feel alert. When the night came, people grew tired and stopped working. The day ended because their energy ended. The common drinks of that time were simple: water, milk, and wine. Water was not always clean. Milk spoiled quickly. Wine and beer were everywhere, even at breakfast. They helped people relax, but they also made people sleepy and slow. There was no drink that could keep people awake and focused. In the deserts and towns of Arabia and North Africa, life was hard. Days were hot, nights were long, and work never ended. Traders, travelers, and students often stayed awake late into the night. For some, like the Sufi monks, staying awake was a form of prayer. They wanted to speak with God in the quiet hours of darkness. But they needed help. They needed something to keep their eyes open. At that time, people already knew about the small red berries that grew on wild shrubs. Some people ate them raw for energy. Others mixed them with animal fat to make a food ball for long journeys. But no one thought the small seed inside, what we call a coffee bean, could change the world. It was just another plant in the forest. Nothing special. Nothing important. Humanity was waiting for something new. Something that could keep the body calm, but the mind alive. They needed a drink that could give focus without drunkenness, energy without chaos. The world was ready for a discovery that would wake it up. It just needed one person to notice, one curious heart to see what others ignored. Our story begins in the green highlands of Ethiopia, more than 1,000 years ago. There lived a young goatherd named Kaldi. He was a simple man. Every day he took his goats to the hills to eat and play. He loved his animals and knew them well. But one day he noticed something strange. His goats were jumping and running wildly. They looked so happy and full of energy. Kaldi was surprised. They had never behaved like this before. He followed them and saw that they were eating small red berries from a dark green bush. Curious, Kaldi picked some berries and tasted them himself. Soon he felt awake, excited, and full of life. Kaldi thought, "These berries are special. They give strength and joy." He wanted to share his discovery. So he took the berries to a nearby monastery. There he met a monk and told him what had happened. But the monk was afraid. He said the berries were the work of the devil and threw them into the fire. Then something amazing happened. As the berries burned, a rich and beautiful smell filled the room. The monks were surprised by the sweet, warm scent. They pulled the roasted seeds from the fire and crushed them. Then they mixed the powder with hot water. That night, the monks drank the new dark drink and stayed awake through their prayers. That was the first cup of coffee. It was born not from science or invention, but from accident and curiosity. Kaldi's goats started it. A frightened monk continued it. And a simple mistake created something that would change the world. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries begin with an open mind and a small, curious heart. The story of Kaldi and the monks was only the beginning. But coffee's real journey, the one that shaped our world, began hundreds of years later. The little beans traveled across the Red Sea, from Ethiopia to Yemen. There, in the 1400s, coffee found its true home. In Yemen, a group of holy men called Sufis began to use coffee. They needed something to help them stay awake during long nights of prayer. They discovered that when the beans were roasted and brewed, the drink became stronger and more delicious. It gave them energy, focus, and peace. At first, they didn't have machines or tools. They roasted beans in small metal pans over an open fire. They listened carefully to the tiny crackling sound. They smelled the air to know when the roast was perfect. It was art, not science, a patient process made by heart and hand. Sometimes the beans burned. Sometimes the drink was too bitter or too weak. But the Sufis didn't stop. They kept trying, again and again. With every mistake, they learned something new. They discovered that the longer the roast, the deeper the flavor. That heat could unlock the heart of the bean. Soon, word of the drink spread beyond the monasteries. Traders, travelers, and scholars began to try it. They called it kawa, meaning the drink that gives strength. People drank it to study, to pray, to work, and simply to feel alive. For the first time, there was a drink that sharpened the mind instead of dulling it. The drink became part of their spiritual life, and then their daily life. In small clay pots over open fires, people began to brew coffee everywhere, at home, in markets, and in mosques. It was no longer just a discovery. It had become a tradition, a ritual, a way to share time and conversation. The journey of coffee was a journey of patience and faith. No one invented it in a lab. It was shaped by centuries of small experiments and quiet devotion. The monks and Sufis only wanted to stay awake to pray, but in doing so, they awakened the world. For centuries, coffee was a drink of monks and mystics. But one day, something changed. Coffee left the quiet walls of the monastery and entered the busy streets of the city. It was no longer only a drink for prayer, it became a drink for people. In the 1500s, coffee reached the city of Mecca, one of the great centers of the Islamic world. People there loved the taste, the warmth, and the energy it gave. Soon, small places opened where men could gather, sit together, and drink. These were the world's first coffee houses. Inside these places, the air was full of conversation and laughter. The smell of coffee mixed with the sound of music and debate. People talked about business, poetry, and politics. They played games, told stories, and shared dreams. The coffee house became a new kind of space, open to ideas, open to people. One writer at that time said, "In Mecca, people drink kahwa and gather in great numbers. They talk of their affairs and stay awake without distress." It was true. Coffee gave people the power to stay awake, but also to think, to imagine, to create. This was the real breakthrough. Coffee was no longer just a drink. It was a movement. It changed how people worked, how they met, and how they shared ideas. In those small rooms filled with laughter and aroma, modern society began to take shape. Every great invention meets fear. And coffee was no different. When it first spread across cities, not everyone was happy. Some leaders, priests, and kings saw it as dangerous, a drink that could change people's minds. In Mecca, around the year 1511, the governor banned coffee. He said it made people lazy and rebellious. He believed coffee houses were places of gossip and trouble. People who drank too much of it, he said, could forget their prayers. But people loved coffee too much to give it up. They met secretly in small rooms, sharing cups and whispers. For many, coffee was more than a drink. It was freedom. It gave them energy to think, to question, and to dream. When coffee reached Europe, it caused even more debate. Some church leaders called it the drink of the devil. They said it came from Muslim lands and should be forbidden to Christians. But then, something unexpected happened. Pope Clement VIII decided to taste it himself. After his first sip, he smiled and said, "This Satan's drink is so delicious that it would be a sin to let only the infidels drink it." With that, he blessed coffee, and the people cheered. Still, not all rulers liked this new drink. In England, King Charles II tried to close coffee houses. He said they were full of talkers and troublemakers. But the people protested, and the ban was soon removed. Coffee had won. No law could stop it. It had become a symbol of freedom, of open talk, open thought, and open hearts. Once coffee was accepted, the world began to change. Everywhere coffee went, it brought new habits, new energy, and new ideas. The small drink that started in the mountains of Ethiopia had now reached the hearts of great cities. In Europe, coffee houses became the center of life. They were open to anyone, rich or poor, worker or writer. People paid only 1 penny for a cup, so they called them penny universities. Because for the price of a cup, you could learn more than in a classroom. Inside those coffee houses, people talked about science, art, and philosophy. They shared books, argued about politics, and imagined the future. It was in places like these that great changes began. The birth of newspapers, new inventions, and even revolutions. In London, one coffee house became Lloyd's of London, the first great insurance company. Another became the London Stock Exchange. In France, writers and thinkers like Voltaire met to discuss freedom and reason. And in Vienna, musicians found inspiration over cups of dark coffee. But the biggest change was in the morning. Before coffee, people often drank beer or wine with breakfast. It made them slow and sleepy. After coffee arrived, mornings became brighter, faster, and more focused. The world, for the first time, was truly awake. Coffee gave people more than energy. It gave them connection. It turned strangers into friends, and silence into conversation. It became a part of culture, of work, and of love. And it continues to shape our days, 1 cup at a time. As the world began to love coffee, something new happened. Coffee started to travel. It crossed oceans, mountains, and empires. What began as a local drink in Ethiopia and Yemen became a global story. The Arabs first kept coffee a secret. They roasted the beans before export, so no one could grow them elsewhere. But soon, other nations wanted this treasure too. In the 1600s, the Dutch managed to get a few live plants out of Yemen. They began to grow them in their colonies, in Java, Sri Lanka, and South America. The French followed. In 1723, a young naval officer named Gabriel de Clieu carried a coffee seedling from Paris to the island of Martinique. The journey was long and dangerous, storms, pirates, and thirst. But he kept the plant alive, even sharing his own water with it. From that one seed, millions of coffee trees would one day grow across Latin America. Soon, coffee plantations spread across tropical lands: Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. But this growth came with a price. Much of the work was done by enslaved people and poor farmers. Coffee brought wealth to some, but hardship to many others. By the 1800s, Brazil became the world's largest coffee producer. Coffee powered its economy, but also tied it to inequality. Still, the drink itself never stopped growing in popularity. Factories began roasting and grinding coffee on a large scale. The world wanted coffee, at home, at work, everywhere. In the 20th century, new inventions changed everything again. The espresso machine in Italy created a faster, stronger, richer coffee. Later came instant coffee, which made the drink available to soldiers, workers, and busy people everywhere. Coffee had become not just a drink, but a symbol of modern life. Today, more than 70 countries grow coffee. It connects farmers in the tropics to office workers in cities from Sao Paulo to Saigon. Coffee fuels conversations, art, business, and dreams. It has become one of the strongest bridges between cultures, a simple cup that unites the world. Coffee's story is not just about a drink. It is about people, their dreams, their work, and their endless curiosity. From a shepherd and his dancing goats to monks in prayer, to traders, thinkers, and workers. Coffee has touched every kind of life. It began as an accident, but became a symbol of connection. It helped people stay awake, but it also helped them wake up inside, to think, to learn, to create, and to share. Every cup carries centuries of history and the warmth of human hands. Writers have called it the fuel of the mind. Artists have said it helps ideas bloom like morning light. And maybe that is true. Coffee gives us more than energy. It gives us focus, hope, and rhythm. It is the pause between chaos and creativity. Today, when you sit with your cup, in a quiet morning or a busy cafe, you are part of this long human story. A story born from curiosity, patience, and the will to stay awake in a sleeping world. From fire and berries to machines and cafes, coffee reminds us of what humans do best. Turn something small and ordinary into something that changes the world. So next time you take a sip, remember this journey. A journey that began with goats, crossed oceans, inspired revolutions, and now lives in your hands. Because the story of coffee is also the story of us.